Hello guys, and welcome to my tier list of all the Borderlands games. Alright, let's just get right into it. I have played all Borderlands games except Tales from the Borderlands, but it's a Telltale game and I played Telltale games before on my channel. So I pretty much know how the gameplay is. It's not really a secret how Telltale did their gameplay. It's always the same-ish. So I'm gonna base it out of that, but if it's different gameplay than any other Telltale game, do let me know. But I've also seen gameplay from it, and it still looks like just normal Telltale gameplay. But I don't know exactly if there's anything special in the game that does happen or something like that, so let me know if that is the case. Anyway, without further ado, let us rank the games. Let's start with the first Borderlands. So, when I played through the first Borderlands, there were more or less no story to even speak of. It was just you were there, and then you were just kind of hired. The angel thingy was just in your head, and then you were riding the bus, and then you're like, what now? Then you fight bandits, and now you're like just going back and forth doing errands for people. With a great gameplay, but the story was very lacking. So I'll say it was... Wait, there is no bad story. Let's just change it a little bit up here. So how many games we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This must have been a very, very passionate Borderlands fan to have made this one like this. Why is red up there, by the way, and green down here? Perfect. So... This tier list doesn't really work for me then, does it? Anyway, I'll just write it then. It has... okay gameplay, but... non-present story. Let's just say it like that. Oops, how do I... add row? Oh no, did I change it? I did, okay. Right, delete row. Okay, there we go. So it's an okay, absolutely okay gameplay with a non-present story. I'll call it that. The reason why I'm saying non-present story is because when I first played it, I had no idea what was going on. You can say that is what they wanted all you want. But all you're doing throughout the whole game is just doing errands for people. And it is very weird because like the whole principle of the first game is you're looking for the vault to get rich. Right? That's like the whole promise of the first game. So that's where you were. You were there to get rich. And then you were just kind of there to doing errands for people. And it's kind of weird because then you were also looking for vault keys at some point. But then again, you were just doing an errand for Tannis. So that whole game, you're kind of just doing errands and things like that, and it was pretty fun. Not too much to complain about. It's not like you go here do that situation. It's more like you have fun going here and doing that situation. You know. It's actually a fun gameplay loop just because of how the gameplay is. But the gameplay itself was also only okay. It's definitely the worst in this series when it comes to gameplay. But story is also okay, but it's not really there. So I'll have to put that as the probably the last one out of all of them that I'll recommend. Yes, even above pre-sequel. Alright? Even above pre-sequel. We're also gonna go in the order of like how the stories take place. So next up is the pre-sequel. The pre-sequel is it's an interesting game because it's sort of like Borderlands 2, but as slightly worse and Australian. It's confusing. A lot of the voice acting in the game is Australian. That's why it's a little bit fun to make fun of it. But the story itself in the pre-sequel was okay. It was okay. Okay. Whoops. Story. And the gameplay itself was good. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's go with that. So the story itself was okay, but the gameplay was good because it was the exact same gameplay as Borderlands 2. Well, I'll get into more detail when I've actually ranked them all. I'll go into more details why they're there and how that is. But right now I'm only ranking them based on story and gameplay. Afterwards, I will tell you why I think they still belong in that category afterwards. So yeah. Okay, start with good gameplay. There's one is a pre-sequel for you about handsome Jack's rise to power. Anyway, next up we got a great story with okay gameplay. After the pre-sequel we have Borderlands 2, I'm just gonna put it here. And Borderlands 2 is a great story with good gameplay. Whoops. There we go. And the gameplay itself is not the main point of Borderlands 2, it's actually the story. Because it was only the gameplay, Borderlands the pre-sequel would have done as good as Borderlands 2, but Handsome Jack in Borderlands 2 really carries the game above and beyond. His whole presence in the game really makes the game so much greater. Same with Tiny Tina's DLC for the game, that also ranks the game up above the rest of this kind of game. And with that, I would definitely say that the story in Borderlands 2 is what's carrying it more so than the gameplay. But the gameplay loop itself is the same as Borderlands 1, same as pre-sequel, but the gameplay is more satisfying than the first Borderlands. And so it also has the whole badass system, which I personally like quite a lot because it feels like having stats carrying from character to character makes you want to play the game more. Like swap characters more, just play through the campaign more until you have like bonuses to the point where you feel like you've done so much in the game that you don't feel like you need any more bonuses, then you just stop playing the game in general. Yes, I'm talking from experience. But that's only if you put a lot of hours into the game. Get out of my PlayStation 3. Sort of regret it now, but oh well. But anyway, that's Borderlands 2 for you. Next up, we got Tales from the Borderlands. And Tales from the Borderlands is a game with a great story, but bad gameplay. Now, Telltale games aren't really about the gameplay, but because I have to compare this game to these other games, I will have to factor in the gameplay as well. So when it comes to Tales from the Borderlands, the story itself is freaking good and it's also canon. To the point where the events are canon, but certain decisions you make in the game are not. And when it comes to that stuff, it is... By the way, I read that up online. It could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's true considering that I've had multiple sources saying that. But when it comes to the Tales from the Borderlands, it makes sense. That it's good from just the story alone and the choices you make in the game. The gameplay itself, like I said, it's not anything to write home about, nothing too special, but the characters in that are pretty damn special to me anyway, from what I've seen. Already after only seeing like maybe 5 scenes, I like Reese's characters and I like whatever her name's character. I know Reese because he was in Borderlands 3 as well. And that leaves me with Borderlands 3, which is not an absolutely perfect game by any means. The ranking here isn't ranked properly, by the way, just saying right now. This game is not perfect. It is very far from perfect, but it has perfect gameplay and bad story. It's the exact opposite of Tales from the Borderlands. Alright, now I'm gonna go into depth as to why I made this decision and where everything comes from. Okay, so to start out with, I'm gonna give the exact ranking that I would probably give them myself. Just so you guys understand where I'm coming from. Okay, let's see, then we have... I mean, yeah, this is probably what I would rank it properly. Okay, so now it's all messed up and weird. But here we go. So first of all, we have Borderlands 1. Now, there are multiple factors into why that game is at the bottom. Now, first of all, we have the character abilities. We have Brick, who can hit things with his fists and do tons of damage. We have Lilith, who can face walk. We have Roland, who can use his turret. And we have Mordecai, who can use his bird. Now, those abilities in themselves are pretty cool, but all of them are pretty limited, except for Brick and Roland's ability. The coolest ability is probably Mordecai's, if I have to be completely honest. But the best ability is definitely Roland's turret. And the second best is definitely Brick's fists. The other two are not very good. Not to say that they have bad skill trees, but their abilities themselves not that great. They don't really bring too much to it, except Lilith can run very fast when she's in phase walk. So if you use that, she can be very fast at going from objective to objective, so you might save time that way. But besides that, really nothing is that great about their abilities. Some upgrades here and there are pretty good, but overall, though, the abilities aren't that cool. So that's why I would rank this Borderlands game. When it comes to maps and gameplay, again, gameplay is okay. It's not horrible. It's not bad. It was pretty revolutionary when it first came out. But at this point in time, comparing the older gameplay to the newer gameplay is just like comparing night to day. The older gameplay, even though the shotguns felt better, everything else felt worse. The guns felt worse. The maps felt worse. A little bit too much running back and forth. Vehicles were a little bit funky. Still kind of are funky today, but better anyway. So Borderlands is just one of those games that you play because gameplay is still fun and it's more Borderlands. Not because there's anything special about the game, but just because this came out before, and sometimes you just kind of want to go back to that to experience something a little bit different than the newer one, and you go right back to the other ones again. So it's that kind of situation you're in with Borderlands. The story, in my opinion, is still pretty much non-present, even though it is there in the side missions. But you never get told that it is. Like, what you do is just you're running blind and doing errands, like I said, and that's just kind of confusing for the most part. So I don't really know about that. Then again, you do also do errands in the other one, but you're a little bit more present in the story, is kind of what I'm trying to say here. So this is definitely my bottom one. My least favorite is normal Borderlands. Now we have Tales from the Borderlands. This one I can't really rank that well, which is why it is at the second last. I am sure it is not bad. I'm sure the characters in it are great, because Telltale always very good with characters, their personalities and stuff. And I've also heard that Handsome Jack plays a role in the game where he is... Spoiler, by the way. Spoiler. I'm gonna say it in 3, 2, 1. Where Handsome Jack is inside of Reese, and he needs to figure out some way to get rid of him or something like that. I don't really know how that works. But this takes place with this game, and Mordecai, Brick, Athena is in this game too, what I've seen. And Vaughn, who also plays a role in Borderlands 2, Fight for Sanctuary, and Borderlands 3 is also in there. So this game influenced the series quite heavily. So I would definitely say that this game is not bad by any means. And just because it is the second last one, it's ranked against Goliaths up here. So I would not say that just because this is the bottom one. Borderlands is not bad. It's better than your typical shooter. So the fact that this is here is still a compliment to it. Although I might have put it at the bottom, like way below here, if it wasn't because I know that usually these games are not about the gameplay, but more about the story and the characters. So that brings me to pre-sequel, where I personally think they had the best abilities in the whole franchise when it comes to characters. Because in the pre-sequel, you have 4 characters on top of Jack's doppelganger and the Frost lady, I forgot her name. She's also in the third game. So to start off with, you also have Claptrap. Claptrap you can play as in that game, which is already a step up. And as stupid as it is, it's fun to play as Claptrap. He has abilities that can kind of use different Vault Hunter abilities at the same time, but with his own little touch to them. So he can get like Zero's ability from the first game, or the second, Borderlands 3, or 2, I mean. And he can use that to do the same thing he can, with his own little flair to it. Same with making like a mini trap, he can do that. Same to Gage's, was that her name? Gage's? Death Trap from Borderlands 2 as well. So there's a lot of influences in Claptrap's abilities from other games, and some extra abilities too on top of that. So that's the thing in pre-sequel. That was Claptrap's ability, only Claptrap's ability, by the way. And it's a ton of abilities in his ability and in his skill trees, so that's kind of cool. Next up, you got Nishia, who pretty much has aimbot. I recently played as her, actually, and I thought it was kind of awful until I played more of it, and I was like, okay, this ability is so overpowered. And it's true, it is overpowered, because she aims automatically at critical points, and you don't even have to aim. Like, she just knows what to shoot, but also only lasts for like 5 seconds. If you have a lot of enemies, you can clearly very quickly clear those guys out. And it charges very fast too, so you can use it every like 20 seconds or something. It's pretty strong. Then you have Wilhelm's ability, which is 2 drones, one for attack and one for defense. And the defense one, you can help your shields for your allies and yourself. And the attack one just kind of does a ton of damage flying over to enemies. And kills them. You can upgrade the drones too. The shield, by the way, for your allies is an upgrade. But besides that, it shields you. It helps with your shield recharge rate. Which brings me to the next character, which is Athena. Now, hers is probably the worst in the entire game, if I have to be completely honest here. But hers is a shield that can be shot at, and it charges up to do more damage when thrown. So you can throw it after it's taken a ton of damage, and it does damage to the enemies equal to the amount that they shot at it, sort of. Which is okay, but it's definitely not my favorite ability in the world. But besides that, she has a pretty good skill tree, so I think that makes up for it a little bit. Then as the 4th character, we have... Wait, who did I forget? I don't think I forgot anyone. I think that was all of them. All the 4 normal characters. Nishia, Claptrap, Athena, and Wilhelm. And then on top of those guys, we have 2 other characters, which is the Doppelganger and the Baroness. There you go, that's her name. The Baroness uses a frost pike thingy that attaches to an enemy, and then if that enemy dies, it attaches to another enemy, and it just freezes them like crazy. It's pretty good, actually. It's not horrible. It's not the best thing ever, but it is pretty good. And then you have Handsome Jack's Doppelganger, which is the Doppelganger. Which, oh my god, that guy's overpowered. You can make badass versions of yourself that does a ton of damage. You can make 2 copies of yourself, and those 2 copies do so much damage when they just keep shooting at the enemy. It's crazy. And you can upgrade them to do more damage. Like, that's the most overpowered ability in the whole Borderlands series, in my opinion. But they're useful abilities in the sense that they are pretty good offensive abilities, pretty much all of them. Except Athena's, I guess. So in that game, it's definitely more offensive, and it's more they're more useful in its essence. Some even more overpowered than others, but all of them are sort of useful, except the shield. I'm gonna keep going back to the shield. And story-wise, there's not really much about it. You just try to help Jack take Hyperion back from the enemies, and then in the end, he becomes bad because there was a vault on the moon that you can see the future with. And then he saw what's going to happen in the future and with the warrior and everything, and then he's obsessed with that afterwards. So yeah, I would say the story here is decent, but it's all about Jack. It's not really about anything else. A little bit about how Lilith and Roland got to where they are in the second game. It just fleshes things out a little teensy tiny bit, but only to the point where it doesn't really affect anyone but Jack and Hyperion. And how Hyperion decided to go to Pandora, down to the planet, and affect it a bit. Which brings us to the big Goliath of Borderlands here. Borderlands 2. The most famous and probably the most loved Borderlands game so thus far. Where the gameplay is pretty good and the story is pretty great. And you go to different parts of Pandora throughout the story, altered by Hyperion's presence. Which happened during and after the pre-sequel. Most likely after the pre-sequel. And there you kind of just do whatever to stop Jack, you know? You kind of just try to stop him from waking the warrior and opening the vault. Helping out Lilith, Roland, and a bunch of other characters that are very fleshed out and everything. Whereas in the pre-sequel, it lacked a bit of character depth and it lacks a few more new characters. So I would definitely not say that the pre-sequel lives up to Borderlands 2's expectations, but it certainly does add something to Borderlands 2 in any sense. So Borderlands 2 by itself stands very tall among every single first-person looter shooter game, and it pretty much comes up on top almost everywhere. Though after playing it like 3 times, you don't really want to play it anymore. But it has some cool things in it. The worst thing about Borderlands 2, I think, is are the character abilities themselves. The skill trees are fine, but the character abilities themselves are very, very passive, sort of. Or very, very, very manual, I guess you should say instead. They're very, very manual. As an example, Axton has to throw his turret. That's the second most idle thing in the game. Where he just throws his turret, boom, it does this thing. Right, and then you can upgrade the turret, you can upgrade yourself in the process. Then secondly, we have the Siren Maya, who can just carry people in the air and make them sit there for a little while so they can be shot. She can also turn enemies friendly for a little while. But that's like later on in the skill tree, like way later at the bottom. And then she can also heal friends, heal her teammates by using her abilities on them. Which is a cool, like, hers is the most interesting skill tree in my opinion in the game, but it's also the most, like, her abilities are very, like, manual to the point where they're like, you have to click the button to do every single thing, and it doesn't just do it by itself, it only lasts for a little while, so you have to do it again and again and again. Whereas I like the ones that has a slight bigger duration myself. Her ability isn't really bad. She's probably the one who has the most unique and most useful ability in the game. But the other two are kind of meh in my opinion. We also have the Gunzerker's ability, which is of course Gunzerking or whatever it's called, where he dual wields his weapons and kind of shoots crazy while he regenerates ammo. I think an upgrade so regenerates ammo for his whole team. But that ability is like just shooting it until it explodes. Shoot the enemy with a lot of health until the health goes away. I mean, I don't think it should really be an ability myself, but it certainly was useful against big, how to say it, big enemies with a lot of health. But against normal enemies, that ability was just not really that great unless you had very good guns. And then we have Zero's ability, which is turn invisible and then attack to do extra damage, which is also kind of meh. But like I said, the skill trees themselves are fine, but I definitely prefer the pre-sequel abilities way more. Same with Borderlands 3's abilities, which I'll get to later on. But character-wise, I definitely would say that Borderlands 2 is the winner besides the Tales from the Borderlands. Tales from the Borderlands is close second when it comes to characters. Meanwhile, Borderlands 3 is just all over the place when it comes to characters and stuff. Maybe a little bit too fast. But yeah, afterwards we have Borderlands 3, of course, the newest in the Borderlands franchise. which is a very, very modern culture inspired, which is one of my dislikes to it. Like, it tries to make fun of modern culture in a way where modern culture influences the game so much that it ironically makes itself into modern culture. Which I really don't like about the game. That's why the story is bad. I don't like modern culture as much. I don't like cancel culture. I don't like pop culture. I like pop music because, you know, popular music. I just like music that sounds fun, sounds good. Not that it's because it's pop music, and the whole streaming thing in the game also makes no sense, because that paints streamers as evil people that take advantage of everything. Sure, there are those, but also good people out there to stream. I don't really get the whole character thing. How did they get into streaming anyway? Why is the dude that you fight first, I guess, sort of, a guy with speakers and everything? Like, it's just so weird. The game is just so bizarre in like how it interprets modern culture. It's also a VR level, by the way. But then later on in the game, it becomes more Borderlandsy. But then you have the annoying, yes, I said annoying main bad guys that you just don't like, and they keep popping in everywhere, and they keep butting in when things get good. Like, it's just, the main villain in Borderlands 3 is just annoying, and I don't think it fits as a villain. Like, none of them really do. The guy fits more than the girl. The Tyrene lady fits less than the guy does. I think the guy hits a bit better than Tyrene's character does in being bad. And then there's also the, like, when it comes to the story, there's also those elements where spoiler incoming, by the way. Okay, spoiler. So in 3, 2, 1. So Maya dies because the guy sucks her abilities away. Meanwhile, us as the players just stand there and watch. And the little kid that causes all of this to happen, who's the fault of it all, blames Lilith afterwards because she's the Firehawk and didn't do anything without her powers. And technically she should have blamed us for it, which would also been more impactful, I guess. But it's like we're not even there, and that kind of ignores the whole fact that the players are playing the game, and the players are kind of in the middle of the story here, and we're in this major point of the story, and we are not even, we are present, but we also aren't present to actually intervene in this thing that's going on, which just makes no sense. And then it also lacks the whole thing where there's this thing in every single game that has like a bad guy, where you have to collect a certain thing that unlocks something the bad guy wants, right? And in all of those freaking games, the good guys open the thing for the bad guy to just take, and this game is not any different. Like, I have very major issues with the story in Borderlands 3, compared to the pre-sequel even. Like, Borderlands 3's story is all over the place. You get introduced to so many characters that it's hard to get to know them, because it just goes by so fast. And it's like they just dropped everything they kind of could into Borderlands 3 to prepare for the next game, where they're gonna flesh it out a little bit more. But I just don't like how fast the Borderlands 3 goes with this story. It needs to take its time and explain the situations on all the different planets and everything. We got a Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 1 that takes place during the, like, on the one planet, and then you get Borderlands 3 that takes place on like 12 planets or something. And all you do throughout that whole time is just go around to 3, 4 areas maybe, and that's that planet. Like, what about the rest of the planet? I want to see more, and it's like, no, you can't see more. I'm like, okay, fine, I guess I'll go to the next planet then. Not to mention how confusing the ship is in that game. The main reason why I like Borderlands 3 more than Borderlands 2, pre-sequel, Taste of Borderlands, and Borderlands, this is just personal preference. Borderlands 2 is still up there in story, definitely story. But Borderlands 3's gameplay is just perfect to me. The guns feel great, they have a great variety. The smoothness of the combat and the gameplay, it's just so damn smooth. It's like so good. Like, if there's one thing that Borderlands 3 did very well, is the gameplay. And the gameplay is the only reason why I would ever recommend anyone buy that game. Because damn if it isn't satisfying. Like, god damn the gameplay in that game. Like, I can keep saying it. Such good gameplay. But everything besides that is just kind of bad. It doesn't really treat the legendary loot that well. The loot system in Borderlands 3 is a little bit confusing because in Borderlands 2 there were all these mini bosses and everything. In Borderlands 3 you just buy a lot of legendary loot, and you can also just randomly get it from enemies that aren't mini bosses or anything. It's very confusing. The Borderlands 3 is definitely a little bit more forgiving than Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel regarding loot. So there's a higher chance there. And the abilities in Borderlands 3 are actually pretty damn good. But some are also overpowered. As an example, we have Flag in that game, who everyone loves for some weird reason. I like the Irish dude more, I think. But yeah, you have Flag, who can summon a skag, and the skag stay with him on the whole freaking time without pressing the button. So it's a passive skag that's always there that hurts enemies. Very strong. Then you have the guy I played as in my Let's Play. Let's Play as right now, actually. Because I'm not done with the game. I don't know the end, but I already have the impression of the game down. And I agree with all other people online that also mention stuff, but then you also have... No, I lost my train of thought. Bad enemy abilities, characters, yes. The Irish guy I played as, where I can put in like a clone of myself with a gun, and he kind of just shoot stuff. Which is very useful and nice, and is a very cool ability. Not as strong as Flags, but very good ability, and you can upgrade to become way better. I think it has the best balance of abilities in the entire franchise. Because none of them are really that overpowered except Flag's ability. So he can just place a copy of himself down there. So that's that. Then we have Mose, I think her name is. She can summon a big Titan, I guess you can say. She can go inside a Titan. She's kind of like Diva from Overwatch. But she can summon a Titan and be inside of and do damage with that one. No, not that great, actually. It's very balanced. It can be good, but it can also be very bad. There's a very balanced ability she has. And then there's the Siren, which ability is like more close quarters fighting, which is okay. Also very balanced. Like, all of them are very balanced. None of them are really that overpowered except Flag's ability. So I would say that Flag's ability is definitely the best one, and the Irish dude is like the second best one when it comes to abilities specifically. I don't know about the skill trees. I only know the Irish guy's skill tree technically. And he got some good abilities, but also some very bad ones. Like, his late abilities are pretty bad. His newer abilities are pretty good. So do with that what you please. But yeah, that was pretty much my little tier list of all the Borderlands games that I know of. I'm not gonna go into depth with any of them, really. I just kind of wanted to give a small little summary of the game and what I really ranked them on. Map design probably goes to Borderlands 2 the most. Story also goes to Borderlands 2. Gameplay goes to Borderlands 3. Characters probably goes to Borderlands, Tales from the Borderlands anyway. Because then they get more fleshed out than Borderlands 2. I still think Borderlands 2 takes a lot more boxes than any of the other games do in regarding to what I like and dislike. So Borderlands 2 is still like on top regarding everything but gameplay. But I can only imagine how good a Borderlands 2 would be if it was made with Borderlands 3's gameplay. That'd be very good. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching my ranking of the Borderlands franchise. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. You can also leave in the comment section whether you agree or disagree, or if there's anything I missed. Feel free to do so. Also, hope that I spoke clearly and so you could understand me. I sometimes I have a habit of kind of just mumbling a little bit, but you know, it happens every now and again. So yeah, but if you have any other games you would like me to rank in the tier list or would like me to play with my friends in perspective mode or whatever, or play alone, you can leave those in the comment section, same as your opinions and everything. Comment section it is, and I will do my best to read and answer them. But besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope to see you in another one of my tier lists, Let's Plays, and stay awesome.